Great to catch up with you. So there's one thing that I want to share with our audience here, radio and television and podcast. This is one of the answers about speed and structure. This question about how Martin St. Louis is getting his players to play, and it's Martin St. Louis. So get ready to go to school and learn something. This is Marty St. Louis. Your brain has to be working, and your feet have to be processing what your brain is seeing to get to the right place at the right time. It's harder to do now. There's a lot of chess in the game now, and to me, it's about getting to the right spots at the right time with and without the puck. Sometimes you get there early, and here's the money line. Sometimes you get there early, but being on time is better than being there early and flat-footed. That is such a Martin St. Louis observation, and it actually leads to a bigger discussion, which is I think the way we judge assists is really wrong in the game. But nonetheless, just isolating that one moment here, Eric, it's a great Q&A. Like, what's going through your mind when you're hearing Martin St. Louis talk about this specifically?
I mean, it's not new to me, right? Because since he's been there for the last year and a half, everything that he's focused on is on the mental connection of his players and playing in space. A couple things come to mind is the way soccer players approach playing soccer, the way they use open space and the arrival on time in certain areas in open space give you the benefit of producing chances. And like you just mentioned assists, like I look at Connor Bedard's assist, his first assist in the NHL. Great play by him, but look at the guy arriving in space as he dishes the puck off to get that open lane towards the net before Donato pops it in. That's exactly what he's talking about. It's about not only skating and using your speed, but using it with intention and using your timing so that you're in connection with the other guys on the ice. And we have an old saying that I think Martin St. Louis and Adam Nicholas, who works in development with the Canadiens, has completely broken down and gotten rid of as a trope, which is that hockey sense can't be taught. And they believe that it can. And for those who have it, they're refining it. And for those who have less of it, they can find ways to teach it.
You know, we used to say that, just as a quick aside, Eric, we used to always say that about shooting. We used to say that about, the great goal scorers in the game. What was the old line that everybody fraudulently believed? I did growing up because I had been brought up, listening to nonsense like this. You can't teach touch. You're a born goal scorer. No, you're not. You're not a born goal scorer. Everyone can work on all these different skills. And when I hear that about, the mental game, I say the same thing. Hockey sense can be taught, just like shooting can be taught, just like awareness can be taught. Brett Hull used to have the great line, and it talks about sort of arriving at that spot suddenly and using your space and arriving on time and not arriving early and being flat-footed and waiting and then getting covered. He used to say, sometimes the best way to be in the play is to be out of the play. And that was Brett Hull's genius. He would vanish, suddenly he would appear. Oates would put the puck on his stick at that perfect time, and then a red light would go on. That's what I think of when I hear Marty St. Louis talk about, arriving on time, because Hull talked about it in a different way. Every market has one player that everybody gets on, and it almost becomes like that one player is the singular player audit of the entire organization. Is that player Juraj Slafkovsky for the Montreal Canadiens?
In some senses, yes, just because of the profile of first overall pick and the pressure that they're under to develop him and turn him into what everyone expects him to be, including themselves. In other senses, it could be Justin Barron, a guy who's a 21-year-old defenseman who people have expectations of and don't see those expectations being fulfilled and are curious, is this really the player that they, got from Colorado going to turn into one that can be a regular in the NHL? I think the potential is there, but like in Montreal versus maybe some of those other markets, you could be the spotlight is certainly brighter and hotter on top of Slafkovsky. But even a guy like Barron's under it too and feeling the heat. So it's a good question, but I would suggest yes. There's a lot of it on Juraj Slafkovsky, and there's a lot of progress that's been made in the player from last year to this year.
You know, when in your Q&A with St. Louis at sportsnet.ca, St. Louis talks about, the team and taking the next step and ready to what is the next step for this team right now?
I wish they would more specifically define it. I certainly understand what they mean. They want to take the next step in terms of the growth of their team and collective game, and within that have each individual kind of move forward. But I think you do need to set specific expectations and goals in terms of results in order to achieve things. And I think internally they're doing that. Externally, they're managing expectations. This is not a team that's going into the year saying, okay, we know what everybody's saying to us and we're just going to feed right into that, land ourselves in a top 5 position for draft and continue to collect the assets because we're in a rebuild. This is a team that is not approaching the season that way. They don't believe that it's a given they're going to miss the playoffs. They're not willing to say outright that they're going to make them, and I think we probably both agree it's a real long shot for them to do it, especially with the division they're playing in this year. But
division's hard.
Yeah, but if you look at the Canadiens as a healthy roster, and they are for the first time in about 3 years, they had the most man games lost over the last 2 years each year individually. This is a team that can be dangerous and can compete with just about any team. Whether or not they end up on the winning side, more often than not, we'll find out. I suspect it won't be the case because there's still some growing pains to go through on the defensive side and with goaltending. But I don't know, the sum of the parts and the way they play together, I think you'll see a bit of that tonight against Toronto, and we'll see where they take it from there.
With Eric Engels, senior columnist, Sportsnet.ca. Check out his latest, the Q&A with Martin St. Louis, head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. Habs in action tonight against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Scotiabank Wednesday night hockey. When we look at this Montreal Canadiens team, we'll talk a lot about Nick Suzuki, rightfully so. We'll talk about Cole Caulfield, rightfully so. Some other young players. We'll talk about Kirby Dach. I think we're all curious to see how Alex Newhook fits into this equation, and can they... can his potential be achieved here with the Montreal Canadiens, who'll be given every opportunity, unlike in Colorado, where he was playing essentially at times with the traveling all-star team and having a tough time to find a consistent spot in the lineup at the elite level. But is there one player, outside of the headline makers that you look at, and maybe for me it's Michael Matheson, but is there one player you look at and you say, you know what, don't sleep on this guy, he may have a big year?
And Matheson would be the first one, because I think what he started proving last year is he's not just the number one defenseman by default, and he can lean more heavily into that this year. I mean, he has the ability to control the game. He really does. And if he stays healthy, look for him to do exactly that at times. Caden Gooley's the other. I mean, what he showed in his rookie season and what he was exposed to should bring him to the next level. And I think there's more detail entering into the equation. Your first year, no matter how good you are, you're learning the league. Now he's learned a fair amount, and he can focus in on the details, tendencies of certain players that he hadn't played before, and now he has. And that's a big factor in learning how to defend at this level and becoming elite at it. And he has every attribute to be an elite player. And I don't care what the analytics or stats will say at the end of the year based on, who he's paired with and how it goes defensively and how many goals he's on the ice for. He's going to play a lot. He's going to play in every situation, and every single element that you would look for in a number one defenseman and leader is right within his possession. I think he's such an impressive player, and he's going to turn a lot of heads this year.
What's the season look like for the Montreal Canadiens? And I'm curious about two players specifically. Expectations, we'll end on this one, got about a minute and a half. Expectations for Kirby Dach and expectations for Alex Newhook. Thoughts?
The first guy, Kirby Dach took a big step last year, and I think he's ready to expand on that. And I'm going to talk about both of them together because they came in under very similar circumstances from teams where the expectations were high. They were high picks in the 2019 draft. They didn't necessarily live up to them in those places, and they weren't necessarily slotted into places in the lineup with their respective teams where they could blossom offensively. There was a benefit to that, though. And I think we saw that with Dach last year, and we're going to see it with Newhook this year. they have to learn the details of the game and play in other roles that would require them to contribute details outside of just scoring. And that was the thing I noted about Alex Newhook. It's really easy to watch Alex Newhook play and say, wow, he flies. He is really fast. He's got skill. He can shoot. He can score. He can set plays. The details have really stood out to me. His tracking back on the puck, his ability to turn pucks over in the neutral zone and transition them the other way. That's a big part of the way Montreal plays, and he fits in well with that. Getting an opportunity to play with Doc, I think they think the game at the same speed, and both of them just have the ability to take the Canadiens to another level, and especially in support of Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield. If you want to see Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield really take off, they need that support underneath them, and I think those two guys are capable of providing it.
Absolutely. Check out the Q&A with Martin St. Louis with our guest, Eric Engels. Enjoy the game tonight. And listen, I know not to get ahead of ourselves too much, but Connor Bedard's on the horizon here at the Bell Center on the weekend, Saturday specifically, Hockey Night in Canada. I'm sure that'll get a headline or two based on what we saw yesterday, and we'll see what happens later on today with the Chicago Blackhawks and Connor Bedard. But you have a quick 30 seconds on, I don't know if you watched the game yet last night, but quick 30 on what you saw from Bedard, because Montreal is going to see him on Saturday.
I think it's dangerous that he didn't score last night. I'd be watching him tonight to see what happens. He has just elite hockey sense. Just elite hockey sense, and he really appears to be a natural-born leader, and I'm excited to, as much as anybody, and I'll definitely be writing about him this weekend, so excited to see him at the Bell Center.
Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks face off against the Bruins this evening against Montreal on Saturday. Thanks, Eric. Always a pleasure, man.
Have a great season, Jeff. I'll be listening and watching.